Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
I'm Shannon Penrod. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thrilled to be here.
I've got a little bit of a cold, so I've got a little bit of a cough drop going on here, and I apologize, but that's what
No
it takes
problem.
to be moving forward.
That's right.
Nancy and I are thrilled to be here this morning. We've got two amazing guests. We've got Vince Redmond, who's on the line with us right now, and we're going to go to in just a second. We also, later in the hour, have Dr. Kathy Marthshack, who is the author of the book Life with a Partner or Spouse with Asperger's Syndrome, and subtitled "Going Over the Edge?" So we're going to talk about
really interesting book.
Didn't you? I think it's a great book for any relationship, not just.
I agree. It had a lot of case studies from her practice, and so we'll talk to her about that.
Very interesting tips. But right
we've
now,
got Vince Redmond.
Yes, Vince, for you guys who don't know, is a licensed marriage and family therapist. He joins us at least around once a month, which is always a joy and a treat for us. Vince has the unique distinction that for years he was a behavioral therapist, so working in the field of ABA as a card therapist, and then became an LMFT. So he's somebody who understands what the intervention is that you're trying to do and some of the ways that it might tax you. So he joins us to help keep our heads screwed on properly, because sometimes Nancy and I need that, because we all do, right? So Vince, welcome back
Vince.
to the show.
Hello.
Hello.
Good to have you with us today.
We're always thrilled to see your smiling face. Vince is like the voice of reason.
Yes.
I always enjoy when Vince comes into a room, because it's like, Vince is here, you know, and then just sort of takes some of the steam out of everything, right?
Some of the stress away. Now, you have some specific questions today about scheduling.
And you know, I get a lot of questions from parents, whether they're card parents or other parents, and I wanted to take a couple of specific things, because when you start an early intervention, as both Nancy and I know, it is, it's daunting, and you don't know what to expect. It's hard on the kids, it's hard on the family, it's hard on the house. It's, it's just a full
it sends your whole life upside down.
Yeah, and you don't know which way is up, and you don't really know who to listen to. So, I've got a mom who's asking specifically about a very young child who's not yet 3, but they've caught it early and they're so excited, and they're getting services, good quality ABA services, and their specialists, they got a prescription for 40 hours, which is what you want, right? This is like, ooh, this is everything
they've got
that we
everything.
want. But the reality of it is very daunting. So he's 2.5, he's been used to taking a nap, but they want, in order to get the 40, they want to ramp him up to 35 this summer. And in order to get him to 35, the nap is really inconvenient, right? And when a child naps, insurance doesn't pay for napping. Right. So they can't really do that. So the mom either has to come to the center to be there, or has to pay for babysitting, because insurance isn't going to pay for therapy while a child is napping, right? But the truth is that they want to get the child sort of weaned off of the nap, have him sleep through the night so they can get as much done as possible. But this particular kiddo, just his hours are all upside down.
And this child is not sleeping through the night?
He's not sleeping through the night. He passes out when they put him in the car to leave the center. They can't get him woken back up. So he's ending up eating dinner at 9 o'clock. And then he's up for hours. Then he's exhausted in the morning, and he's even to the point where he's been so tired he's thrown up during ABA sessions. And mom is just beside herself, Vince. So help us to figure out what would be helpful for this mom, what would be helpful for this little boy, what would be helpful for the team, and dealing with all the emotions of this, because it's really hard.
Right, and for sure, and for a 2.5-year-old, 3-year-old, naps are still developmentally appropriate. So we do need to look at what the child's developmental needs are. So the first thing that I would talk to, or with the supervisor and the parent together, is how do we structure in nap time? How can we do that logistically? Because like you said, with funding and times and things of that nature. And how can we do that so that it helps his sleep patterns at night? I have a suspicion, I could be wrong, but that we're trying to fit everything into a Monday, Friday, or a limited time schedule, to where this child is just trying to get too much done in a short amount of time. So I would definitely want to talk with the family about where is our schedule? Are we doing 7 days a week? Are we doing 5 days a week? What can we do to spread it out so that we have more time for his developmental needs, like his naps and things like that, so that he's not completely just falling apart at the end of the nights, which then, as you said, is rolling over into the middle of the night where he's not going to bed until midnight or later, as well as then he wakes up sluggish and cranky, and I'm sure he's not in the best position to go ahead and start treatment, the next morning. So I guess a long story short to the question is, I think naps at 2.5, 3-year-olds is developmentally appropriate. And I think there needs to be some scheduling done with the clinical team and the family to find out what's best for everyone.
I think that's absolutely right, Vince. And here's the thing, though, that I think is really hard is that when you come from a background where you don't understand ABA and you've never done ABA, the rational choice is, well, we'll just cut back the hours, right? Isn't that the go-to that we go to as parents? And then having to explain to mom, that's not the right thing in this circumstance. You're going to have to rearrange some other things and pull some strings other places. You don't want to lessen the hours. But it's hard because in the world of rational thought and before you came to autism, the right choice, and this is one of the reasons why I especially love you, Vince, is I've said many times on this show before that when I was having anxiety and issues because of ABA and some of the things that were going on, I went to an LMFT and she said to me, she goes, well, it sounds like that ABA thing you're doing is really the thing that's causing you stress. I would stop that. That was her advice to me.
Really?
That was really,
Yeah.
And I was like, what? That's not helpful to me at all. Because if you don't understand what ABA is going to do
Right.
and how it works, it is the rational choice. So it's, I guess, Vince, it's how do we help mom to understand that you're going to have to prioritize things in a different way and look at this with different eyes.
Right. And I think that some of that goes back to just understanding the success of treatment, right? ABA and, discrete trial training is all based on the predicate of repetition and exposure, right? So the more repetition, the more exposure do they have to the lessons and the learning methods that we're teaching them, the more success and skill building that the child's going to get. The less we do of that, the less they're going to learn, right? The time in which they're going to learn is going to take a lot longer than if they get the treatment that's being clinically recommended. And there's no doubt that there sometimes needs to be a workup to that hours. And I know you had mentioned that in the beginning, and it sounds like there is a plan to, slowly work up the hours to the 35. However, I think you're spot on in the fact that reducing the hours really is reducing the effectiveness of the treatment. It's reducing the effectiveness of the child's progress. And what we need to do is look at either the other treatments or other therapies, other commitments, other priorities that are going on, and how do we work with those so that we can continue to work the treatment at the clinically recommended hours, or at least work up to the treatment at the clinically recommended hours, but also making sure that the child's getting his developmental needs, which would be naps and sleep and snacks.
It also sounds to me like this family needs to put into place some sort of plan to get their child to bed earlier.
Well, but what's happening is that
he sleeps
now
too late.
They leave the center at 5 o'clock,
right?
And they have a half an hour drive to get home.
Okay.
And he falls asleep in the car,
right?
Which I can really massively relate to. I couldn't go anywhere at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because Jem would just go to sleep, and I could hold him upside down and shake him by his feet, and he wouldn't have woken up. There's no way he would wake up because they're tired at that point.
Right.
So she comes home and she can't get him to wake back up to eat dinner, and then he wakes up to eat dinner at 9, and then they're all kerfooed.
Right.
And she feels, and I think understandably, she feels like she's behind the 8 ball, and all these people are saying different things to her, and she's like, I just don't want my child to be throwing up.
Right.
Like I just want my child to not be throwing up, which I agree is important. The child has to get sleep, and the child can't be throwing up. But I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, well, stop doing ABA. So I appreciate
reduce it.
Yes. Now we had another question that came in just now, Vince, that I'm wondering if you could take. Parent wants to know, is it possible to potty train a child that is not fully verbal, Plus, he does not cry when having a dirty nappy. He can go for hours, wet or dirty, and would not care at all.
Yeah, it's possible. It's definitely possible. And in most of, all of our BCBAs for sure, and our centers are trained to be able to work with all different levels of children, when it comes to potty training. Now, some of it is going to be a lot of prerequisite work working up to potty training. So it's not as if we just say, oh, we want to work on potty training, let's go. So we would need to do potty logs and some data collection. Again, getting them to recognize if their diaper is full or empty, those types of things. And we can do that in many different, ways to help them either communicate or be able to identify that it's time to go to the bathroom. And then using reinforcements and different reinforcement procedures, we can continue to reinforce them for successes as they go ahead and void on the toilet. But that could be a very long process, but it's definitely a process that the centers can work on.
I find that one of the things that's most interesting about the autism community, because anytime there's an issue with a kiddo, there's also, as you know so well, Vince, there's also an issue of anxiety on the parents' part, right? Because aren't we always anxious? Well, my kid's not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, of course.
Some kids can do it, but my kid isn't going to be able to do that. And I love being in a room with behavior analysts and talking about potty training when there's a room of parents. Like, I would love to just have 40 behavior analysts line one side of a room and the parents on the other side of the room, and just have them watch each other's faces and bring up and say to the parents, do you think that your child will be able to be potty trained? And see the look on the parents' faces, and then say to the behavior analyst, do you think that you can potty train their child? Because parents don't know, Vince, that you guys have cracked the code on this. Behavior analysts have such confidence around potty training. They're like, oh yeah, no, that's not going to be a problem. It's just we're going to do this steps, and sometimes it takes this many days and weeks, and sometimes it takes this many, but it's just a series of steps, and this is how we do it. We've cracked the code on it. We've figured it out, and we can potty train pretty much anybody if there's not a medical issue. And the parents, we all go, really? You can, like, wait a second, because my child has an issue with this, and the behavior analysts are like, yeah, no, we got that. We totally have that. And it's something that I like to spread to parents, because it's one of the big first hurdles in those first early years, that, because, no daycare center will take your child.
Right.
No nursery school. You can't go to kindergarten in a diaper. There's a lot of anxiety about it. And we've all heard of the teenagers that are in diapers and fear it.
Right, of course.
So I love that this mom wrote in. But Vince, is there anything you want to say to that anxiety that the parents have, that we all are worried, whether it's potty training or something else, that we're like, oh, I don't know if my child's going to be able to do that?
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head with that one, in that anxiety is a natural anxiety, right? It's a natural anxiety that we have for all of us have for our children. Will they be able to achieve certain goals? Would they be able to achieve certain developmental steps as other children have? So I think that some of that anxiety is very natural, but I do think that, again, you're in the hands of professionals that can work with this, that have done this successfully, that really know the steps and procedures to be able to make this successful, and being able to collaborate and be a part of that and really understand the systems and the protocols and things that the supervisor or the team will be putting in place, and then being actively a part of that, I think goes a long way. Our anxieties go down not only when we have knowledge of it, but then are participating in the process as well, because then they're going to feel that they're a part of the solution.
Okay, that's very good advice. Good advice.
Vince, you're always so wonderful.
Yes.
Always so wonderful. We just like to, wouldn't you like to shrink him and put him in your pocket and take him everywhere?
Would. Yeah, he'd be a great anxiety reducer for many different things.
Does your wife feel that way about you too, Vince?
No, I just create anxiety with her.
I don't believe that for a moment. Your wife is a lovely woman,
all right, well,
and I don't believe it.
Thanks for being with us today, Vince, and answering these questions. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Have a great rest of the month, ladies.
Okay,
You
thank
too.
you.
Take care.
Right,
Wonderful. Don't we love him?
We're going to come back and do In the News?
Yes, we got a lot in the news.
Yeah, we've
so
got some
stick
good
with
stories.
Us.
Okay.
Talk to us a little bit about what your degree is in.
city planning or urban planning.
I got it from Cal State Northridge with a degree in cinema and television arts with an emphasis in screenwriting.
And what are you interested in, Eli?
A video game internship.
Computer programming.
I'm hoping to combine entertainment or travel, my two passions.
Ooh, what kind of jobs have you worked?
Bakery inventory.
Okay, inventory.
Want to talk about your volunteer job?
Operation going to help the soldiers.
You volunteered to help the soldiers?
Yes.
I interned in the national parks in the Santa Monica Mountains, which is very urban area. So I worked with the problems of how it's impacting the surrounding community, like the flow of traffic and the flow of people and what they could do to plan in the parking.
I've been to China, I've been all around Europe, I've been to Thailand, Japan, Australia.
You can create an app? That's impressive. Really cool thing. Can you teach other people how to make an app? If you have a choice between working or not working,
Working.
you like working.
Yes.
Why? What do you like about working?
It is fun.
I would work
Yeah, you would choose work. Why?
because I get more that get paid and enjoy it, and want to make sure I have enough money so I can save it.
Why do you need to have a full-time job? I mean, it's kind of like a duh thing, right?
No, obviously, so I
Yeah.
can support myself
Right.
and hopefully a family down the line, but at least at first, myself.
I'm very dependable and always reliable and get to my job on time.
What excites you about working a job or being an intern?
Learning new skills.
Yeah. What has it meant to you having this job and having the stability of a job that you've had for multiple years?
It's meant the world because I'm able to do everything, but almost everything I wanted to do because of that job.
And we're back with Let's Talk Autism, and we have some great stories in the news today.
I wanted to
actually
just-
very encouraging ones.
Yes, but I want to just briefly touch on, I know we're all sick to death of hearing about children being separated from their parents.
Immigrant children.
Yes, and being put in facilities where there's a lot of discussion. There's a friend of the show who's trying to go to one of those and take donations. Everybody's talking about what can we do. And one of the things that I'm not hearing talked about is that statistically, a significant portion of those children are on the autism spectrum.
Right, and they're being isolated from their parents, and they're not getting any treatment, they're not getting any attention.
And the fact that, I mean, it's horrifying to me on so many different
Right.
levels. And I know that there are people probably who are watching, certainly, people in my realm of friends that are saying this isn't happening, that it's all a lie, that the children aren't being put into cages. And yet there's so much evidence to the contrary. I don't completely understand that. There are people who are saying, well, this law was created by, that's been debunked a million times, but even if that's where you're coming from, it's still happening. So we need to do something about it, whoever started it. It's not, for me, it's not, who did it, let's fix it. Who's going to fix it? That's what I want to know.
And it needs an urgent fix.
It needs
Right.
an urgent fix. I keep
Not-
going back to my days of being in college in an abnormal psychology class. There were two particular things that we studied that come to mind with this particular thing that's happening. The first one is the theory of the perfect world, that we all like to think that the world is perfect. And so if something happens that's terrible, we like to look at it and figure out how that wouldn't happen to us. It's why you see people saying, well, that woman dressed that way and when she was raped, and so I wouldn't have dressed that way, so it wouldn't have happened to me. It's a way that we compartmentalize to comfort ourselves. We all need to be aware of the fact that we all do that. It's just human psychology.
Right.
But it has an impact on our society. And so I've seen people who are like, well, these people broke the law. And so that's why it's happening to them. I would never break the law, so this would never happen to my child. I just want to remind people that these are human beings. These are human beings. They did not break the law. and we need to help these children. And some of them are our kids.
And these children are being separated. Families, like brothers and sisters, are being put in separate holding facilities.
And they're telling the workers that they cannot have physical contact with them. And the other thing that we learned in abnormal psychology is that if you take children and you house them all together and you give them no physical love, their brains don't develop.
Well, we've seen that happen in orphanages, in Russia and China, where
It's
the children
horrifying.
don't develop.
It's cruel. And
normally.
the things that then happen to those children, they become inappropriate.
Right.
And their actions become inappropriate
Right. These
because they will
children are
do
going to be
whatever.
traumatized for life.
They will be, and we've heard so many victims in the last few days of the Holocaust talk about, because they're senior citizens now, but they were the babies who were separated from their parents during the pogroms and marches, and that they are senior citizens and that they have been traumatized their entire life because of that. I think as a group of people, we just all need to unite, put everything else aside, and say this has to be fixed and has to be fixed as soon as possible.
Right. Agreed.
Yes. And as it's Debbie Tippett-Clark, who has been on the show before. She is arranging a visit to one of them and to take donations, and we'll keep you guys.
Is she? Okay.
Yes, we'll keep you guys posted on that if
Okay,
you want to
wonderful.
donate games or things or whatever. I know Michael Moore has suggested that we all find the nearest detention, gather hands together, and stand in a circle around it. To show our protest. I've been trying to figure out what the closest one is to us, to see if that's something that I can go and do myself. Honestly, there is at least one facility where that has taken place, and the workers were upset and complained and said, you're preventing us from being with our families because we can't get through to go be with our families. The irony is
what irony is there in that?
Okay, so some of the other news. Shall we start with something good?
Let's start this
Palate
wonderful
cleanse?
story about the autistic boy who was normally nonverbal. He received a standing ovation after speaking at his graduation ceremony at Plano Senior High in Texas on June 9th. Now, if anybody, this was all over the internet.
Yeah,
And
everybody
it was a
got
wonderful
chance to see
story.
this.
Most people were very surprised, most of his fellow students, because he doesn't normally speak. And he took the mic and addressed his fellow graduates. And he said to do what is the unexpected was sort of the focus of his speech. And while many had seen him in the hallways, he was largely in special needs classes. Most didn't know him, but his mother, when there was a notice inviting seniors to audition for a speech for graduation, his mother urged that he do it, and he did, and he was so excited about it, practiced for weeks on end,
Amazing.
and then delivered this speech, and it was really,
There's
he said, unexpected, this is what I want you to remember, unexpected.
I love it. There's a big push right now that always before it used to be that there was a valedictorian and a salutatorian, and those were the speeches at graduation. And a lot of times those aren't the people who would give the best speeches.
Right.
Certainly they earned it.
Right.
But they weren't the people who wanted to give speeches or gave the best speech. I love that now some schools are saying, yes, we have the valedictorian, and we're auditioning people who want to be speakers, because it allows for this kind of thing for somebody who wouldn't normally have been able to speak at graduation to speak and put something out there that was life-changing for the people there and for the world that we all got to. So congratulations to him, to
Seth Scott.
and to his mom and his brother for making that happen, and to the school for helping to foster that. Really wonderful thing. Okay, and maybe you've heard about that the largest grant ever for research in autism has been awarded, that there are now 48 universities and research institutes, including Trinity College Dublin, that will take part in the trials and the study. It's an amazing amount of money. I don't know.
It's in pounds here.
It's 115 million pounds. What does that work into dollars? It's got to be like 200 and some odd million dollars, doesn't it? But really an amazing thing. I can't wait to see what comes out of it. Love that it's not just one entity that's getting the money. 48 universities and research institutions. So we're going to look forward to seeing what comes out of that.
Right.
We know that research dollars make a huge difference.
And
Let's hope they
Trinity
use it
aims
well.
to find biomarkers that can help identify specific biological pathways involved in brain development. That's what they're going to
Very
focus on.
excited about that. And then I thought this was really interesting because we have a lot of arguments that will come
So many
across-
arguments on this.
About diet and autism, right?
Some studies that say it makes no difference, but this is a study out of Arizona State University.
And I wanted to put this in because so often I'll be talking to fabulous BCBAs, board certified behavior analysts, and they'll say to me, what do I do for the parent who really wants to try a diet with autism, even though we know that there's been no research showing? And I always say to them, well, there is a great deal of research that shows that it has no effect. There is, I'm not denying that, but there are probably 100+ studies that show that it does have an effect. And I personally, in my home laboratory, in my kitchen and dining room, saw that it made a difference for my son.
The GFCF made a difference for my son.
And this study out of ASU says it makes that there's a deep connection between diet and the symptoms of autism. They did it by changing the diets of 67 children and adults with ASD and following their progress over the course of a year. I love that it was not just a 6-week thing, because some of these diets, it takes time for the colon to heal before you can see anything. And they gave them an assortment of tests. The tests range from blood tests to look at different nutrition markers, to muscle strength tests, to nonverbal IQ tests. The idea was to combine many different dietary changes in a single study to measure the total effect of these changes at the end of the year. And they found that certain foods, especially those containing gluten, soy, and casein, where have we heard those words before, caused large improvements in nonverbal IQ test performance when paired with a multivitamin and a few other interventions like Epsom salt baths. Taka has got to be like screaming and yelling and jumping up and down, because they've been talking about this for the better part of 50 years.
Yeah, they have.
So they said that our study is complicated because we looked at 6 different treatments. For each one of those treatments, we had a previous research by other group or other groups. To some extent, our goal was to put all those treatments together and have a more comprehensive study. You can read all of this. We got it in statepress.com. But amazing. Amazing. And they said it was amazing. The calls we were getting, parents had forgotten what some of the behaviors were because they hadn't seen them for so long. I've heard so many stories from parents about how well it was working for them. So gotta love that. And you can find more information on Nourishing Hope. That's Julie Matthews, who we've had on before.
Yes.
She's got more information about the diets and studies there. So,
we've got a great guest that's coming up.
Yes. Can I take 1 second to answer this question? So Laura D wants to know, how do you potty train older kids when they don't have regular bowel movements and have anxiety with having bowel movements on the potty? My child is 8 years and goes number 1 on the potty, but will not go number 2 unless she has a diaper on. The potty training, when I was talking earlier about the potty training that they'd cracked the code, it's something called the Fox and Azrin method. And your child has already gotten the potty under control, but it might be worth it to go back and look at the Fox and Azrin and see what the steps are. With the poo side of things, and I just go to that language, with the poo side of things, it's a little bit more difficult. But it's basically the same thing, but you're gonna wanna kind of chart and get an idea. Like, children tend to have patterns. It's just sometimes the pattern is more spaced out. So some kids will, every day at 8:15 they'll take a poo, right? Other kids, it's like on Tuesday they take a poo at 8:15 and on Wednesday they take it at 5:15, right? So you might have to take like 2 weeks worth of data and keep track of what they eat. With some kids that, like, if they eat a pear, for instance, an hour and a half later they have a poo. I don't know what the thing is. I always heard about prunes. I'd never heard about pears. But so keep a food diary and keep a poo diary. But the biggest thing is a reinforcer. If there's, like, pick what is the biggest reinforcer for her in the world. For my kid, because the poo thing was a lot harder to figure out, and they said go take, and Toys R Us is closing any minute now, so it's really hard, but go to a toy store, go wherever it is that she wants to go, wander the aisles, find the thing that she wants, purchase it, take it home, stick it up on, we put ours on the towel bar. He wanted a Lego night. We put it up on the towel bar, and we would go, and he would want it. And we'd say, yep, you can have that
After.
as soon as you do a poo in the potty.
Right.
And he was terrified to poo in the potty. It felt like he was losing a part of himself. And that was like, it's horrifying.
Now,
It's
was
like,
this done when he was under ABA therapy, doing ABA therapy?
he was doing ABA therapy.
Okay.
And he was significantly younger, but it's the same no matter what age. You say
Okay.
to her, this thing you can have once you take a poo in the potty. And she takes a poo in the potty, and if she's really afraid of the toilet, get her a potty seat. And they have older potty seats. They have adult potty seats, right? So that it doesn't have to splash. Maybe it's the splash, maybe it's the flushing. Who knows what but you know, she's concerned about the toilet, you can take it off, but get her to do it not in the diaper. And when and it's no discussion. It's just, you get the thing when you do it. And don't egg her on and say, you can have it, just like, you can have that when you do that. End of discussion. But the second that she does it, it's got to be something that's worth it to her. The second that she does it, you give her the thing for the rest of the day. It's hers for the rest of the day. Then she goes to bed at
then you
night.
take it away.
It goes, when she goes to sleep,
Okay.
the thing goes away. It goes back up on the shelf. And the next day, oh, there it is up on the shelf. As soon as you take a poo today, you get to have it.
Okay.
My son, it was like his full-time job. He was going to take a poo so that he could have that night. But it's got to be the thing that they super duper want.
Right.
If it's not reinforcing enough, they'll be like, I don't want that.
Okay.
Well, I'll live without that.
Right, right.
I've learned to live with disappointment, right?
Right.
But honestly, and you know, if it's not a tangible thing, I've heard of parents that were trying to get their kid to swallow a pill. And they said, when you swallow the pill, we will leave and go to Disneyland. And their kid swallowed the pill, and they were in the middle of something. It was a work day, and they were like, we're going to Disneyland right now. Whatever it is that you promise, it's got to be
Make sure you follow through on it.
right then. If it's that she wants to go to get an ice cream cone, you got to go right then.
Right.
She poos, you're in the car getting the ice cream
Right.
cone. Or you have it in the freezer, whatever it is.
Okay.
But you'll see that will get it done. If
Okay.
she's already got one, she can do the two too.
Okay.
And you can too.
All right.
All right, we're going to take a
So
break.
now we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be with Dr. Kathy Marshak, who
Yes.
wrote Life with a Partner or Spouse with Asperger's Syndrome, Going Over the Edge, Practical Steps to Saving You and Your Relationship. Fascinating book, so can't wait to have her
All right,
on.
stick with us.
Nobody ever asks a kid with autism, what is it you'd really like to do? At this school, we ask the kids, what is your goal? What is your dream? Exceptional Minds is a vocational training program for young adults on the autism spectrum who want to have careers in computer animation and visual effects. I think young people with autism are totally underestimated.
When you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. They all have different talents, different skills, and what surprised me is that there really are no limits, that if these guys believe that they can do something, they really can.
It's estimated that 90 to 95% of young adults with autism are unemployed or underemployed.
A lot of young adults still live at home. A lot of them suffer from depression and are very isolated from the rest of the world, and the opportunities for them are very limited.
We want to develop careers for our young adults. Our full-time program runs 3 years, at the end of which we have job placement and job coaching. We have a work readiness program. We also have our own in-house studio so that when our students graduate, they can do on-the-job training and work on real projects.
We outsourced about 30-40 shots to the team here. They did fantastic work that we can put into a movie and be proud of it. It's great. I mean, we want to do it again.
The studio is their first step into the professional world, the first step in their new careers as digital artists.
The whole purpose is to get the students out into the real world.
We all have the same dreams. We want significance, dignity, and purpose with our lives. We have an opportunity to give those 3 words to every single student at this school who will actually be able to go out and participate in the dream.
This is my first full-time, full-paying job. I primarily work in After Effects. I learned After Effects at Exceptional Minds. It seemed like a good place for me to fit in because I was interested in animation.
Right from the first day that Nicky set foot in our company, he was producing work for us. We saw what level of professionalism is being instilled in them from the very beginning.
This was the first opportunity where Nicky could combine something he loved to do with something he was really, really good at that could eventually lead to employment.
When we first met Kevin, he was working at a supermarket bagging groceries, and they said he would never amount to anything else.
I work at Stargate Studios, and I'm a junior compositor. I mainly do like rotoscoping right now, and I'm still learning.
I think that you find great talent in the most amazing places. The students at Exceptional Minds have had a fair amount of training to get them ready for the visual effects environment.
If it wasn't for Exceptional Minds, I might still be at the supermarket, and I might be living at my parents' house.
Everything's changed. Nicky has purpose.
It feels like I'm a member of society now.
He's capable of making it on his own.
Once you get inside and you see what's really happening there, you immediately want to be a part of it.
It's the dream factory, you know, of the movie business, and if you can connect people with their dreams, then the magic happens.
At Exceptional Minds, we like to say that we are changing lives one frame at a time.
And welcome back. And we are now joined by Dr. Kathy Marshak, PhD, who is a licensed psychologist. And she is the author of a fascinating book called Life with a Partner or Spouse with Asperger's Syndrome, Going Over the Edge, Practical Steps to Saving You and Your Relationship. Dr. Marshak, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, good to have you.
Thrilled to have you. We both enjoyed your book and love different things about it.
Yes. I love the way you took actual case studies. Tell us about that. Did you take people from your practice and you utilized their stories as part of this book?
Yes, I did. As a matter of fact, obviously I want to protect people's privacy, so I might have changed some data in the story to make sure that nobody was, their privacy was invaded. But yes, these are real stories, people that I work with, even people in my own personal life. And as we were talking about earlier, I do have family members on the spectrum.
Yes, tell us about that, your family members on the spectrum.
Well, the first one for me to recognize was my daughter, and I was trying to figure out, this is kind of what got me into this field, is I'm a psychologist, but that doesn't mean I know anything about autism. And then when it became personal, when my daughter was 13, I realized that's what was going on. And I had taken her to many, yeah, there she is.
Oh, okay.
I'd taken her to lots of people for asking for what to do, but nobody could identify what it was. And when I finally said, I think this might be Asperger's at the time, you know, high-functioning autism, then I started getting some traction. And then I figured out that my mother probably was on the spectrum, as were a number of relatives prior to anybody being able to diagnose them.
How interesting is that?
So that must have given you enormous empathy for some of the people that you were working with, having come from this background and having personal experience.
It really woke me up. It really woke me up to what was going on. And, you know, I was obviously late as a parent, finding out that my daughter was at 13, that fit, and then doing my best to read things and talk to people and try to figure out what I could do to, you know, make up for lost time.
Well, what I love is that what that has led to is you writing so eloquently, and this is not the only book, but you write not for the individuals so much on the spectrum, but for the neurotypical people in their lives, to give them a roadmap to be able to understand what's happening when things don't work, when communication doesn't work, and to find ways to maintain the relationship through that issue, which I think is powerful.
Yeah, I'm often telling people that I'm not an expert on autism by any means. I'm an expert on living with autistic family members and, you know, breaking down the myths and the barriers and the crazy stuff that goes on. One of the reasons that people write to me when they read that book is they say, how did you know I was living with this? And it's primarily the loneliness. You know, it's the trying to connect and communicate and break through to somebody you care deeply for, and it just isn't working.
Absolutely. Now, you love the case studies. I like those too, but I'll tell you, my favorite part of this book is that at the end of each chapter, you have a section called Lessons Learned. And it's sort of the Reader's Digest, like I kind of want them on flashcards to take with me, because it's some of the best advice for any relationship, no matter who the relationship is between. They're really fabulous guideposts that a lot of us probably either take for granted sometimes, but they would be a great thing for a couple to talk through and have discussion tips with. Really powerful stuff. There's one chapter in here in particular where you talk about sex and say sex is not a commodity. I wanted to find what the title of it was. And as I'm reading through these lessons learned, there's, I don't know if you saw, it was an award-winning film this last year, won at Sundance, a documentary called Dina, about a woman on the spectrum who recently got married. I want to send this to her. Both people who got married are on the spectrum, but I want to send your book to her because it would help them so much. Are you familiar with the film?
I'm not familiar with the film, but I certainly have had a number of people, spectrum people, ask me about things like this because both what I write about is this connecting piece, their struggle with the connecting, whether it's sex or love or teaching your child something. We just take for granted, neurotypicals or non-spectrum people take for granted that the first step is connecting, but that's not always the case.
Yeah.
Sometimes the connecting has to look a lot different if you're going to reach that person.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It totally makes sense.
You take the point of view of the neurotypical spouse or parent in each of these case studies. Is that correct?
I do. I think it's a part of the puzzle that hasn't been addressed very much. You know, the non-spectrum partner, the mom or the dad or the caretaker person is often viewed as you know, needing to learn a lot about autism, which is true, but then their needs are not taken into the picture. You know, how do they feel when their sex is a commodity, you know, when it's just an act as opposed to this is a loving connection with someone that I care about. It's very lonesome in these relationships for neurotypicals. It's very lonesome.
It is very lonesome. And what do you think, which is kind of disturbing that there are so many inherent problems. So do you have generally a positive feeling about these relationships? And do you find that most of them need some sort of therapy?
Oh dear, I don't know if most of them do. You got to realize the people that come to my office say they do.
Right.
They want some help. I'm not sure that that's true for everybody, but the people that I'm seeing are feeling lonesome, confused, distraught. They don't understand the kinds of questions or the way that an autistic person will organize the data. I was telling one of my high-functioning autistic clients, I said, well, you think about people, you care about the people in your life, but you're not necessarily considering them as you're organizing the data in your life. Does that make sense? It's separate.
Right.
And because it's separate, people get the impression that you don't value them or that they're not important to you. And he said, but they are. And he said, boy, I sound selfish. And I said, well, yeah, that's how it would sound to the neurotypical, or that's how it would feel. But it's not true that you know, obviously he loves them, he cares, he would do anything for them. But the way you communicate to each other is extremely important, and neurotypicals expect that they're going to be considered first in any interaction.
And that's an unrealistic expectation. Even as I hear you say that, I think that's unrealistic.
It is unrealistic. It's not going to happen. And if you feel dashed every time, that's not going to work. So I was just one of the examples I use in this book. I believe it's this book. It could be my second book. I wrote a book on parenting with a partner as well. My 16-year-old autistic daughter was starting to get all upset because I had come home from the store and had not brought her favorite snack for her. And I was just asking my two daughters to please help me put the groceries away. And she was just saying, I can't believe you I don't think I can handle it. You didn't bring this food that I was expecting. So I said to her, I said, you know, why don't you go to your room and listen to some music for a while? And Phoebe and I'll put the groceries away. And Bianca said, I don't think that's going to work. And I said, well, give it a try. Just go see. You love music. Go to your room. When you feel better and you want to come back, you come back, but go ahead. So my younger daughter, who's not autistic, she says, Mom, that's not fair. Of course, she's 14. She's going to have to help with the groceries. I'm sorry, I'm freezing up there.
Yeah.
At any rate,
we can still hear you
back. I'm coming back. I'm still here.
Yes.
But at any rate, Bianca went down to her room. She did what I asked her to do. That might calm her down. And Phoebe was going on.
Oh, and now we lost her entirely. Let's see if we can get her back, because I really wanted to talk about radiant empathy.
Okay, right.
Which she really thinks is important. And I also want to say, too, one of the things that I love about her book is that on a regular basis, she encourages people, if this is happening, it's time to seek professional help.
Right.
And that's always a thing that's beneficial, which I think is so responsible. Have we got her back? Is Kathy back with us?
Oh, you're
back.
back.
No, that's
okay.
Great. While you were gone, I was just saying that you, many times in the book, you will state specifically, if this is happening or if you're having a problem with this, please seek out professional help. And I just thought that was so responsible. And when you're done with your story, we lost her again. Okay, we lost her again. That may be the death
Maybe the last time. Well, let's talk about. We can get her books on Amazon.
Yeah, and she has many books, and so she was just mentoring. Oh, there's her website for you guys to see.
KMarshak.com.
And
she also has a meetup group,
which is fabulous.
A meetup website.
Which is absolutely fabulous.
That's for neurotypical adults with a spouse, partner, sibling, parent, or grown child who has Asperger's syndrome.
You just have to love that. You can get the book on Amazon, of course, but it is put out by aapcpublishing.net. And as we said, she's got other books as well. Really, really good manual. If you're having difficulties in your relationship, whether one or both of you are on the autism spectrum, I highly recommend. Don't you, Nancy?
Yes, I do.
Great tips and advice. We're so sorry that we lost Kathy, and I wanted to hear the end of that story.
No, I am back.
Oh, she's back.
You're
She's
back.
It's like a phoenix.
I'll be here.
Okay.
Finish the story for us.
About radiant empathy. Did you want me to talk about that?
I do, but I want to hear the end of the story about your daughter going away.
So I believe in being honest, and so with my daughter, my younger daughter, when she was complaining, I said, Phoebe, would you want to have the problems your sister has?
Oh, yeah.
And she looked at me and she said, no, and she stopped arguing. I said, it's better that we give her a break. So the problem is, of course, parents with the neurotypical child are saying, how come that child isn't getting the same break?
Yeah.
But she does. Phoebe has friends. Phoebe played soccer. Phoebe didn't have the trouble in school that her big sister did.
Yeah,
but parenting two different children is not so easy to do.
No, I can imagine.
Not at all. So now we've just got a couple of minutes left. Talk to us about radiant empathy.
This is great. This is in my last book, which doesn't have a positive title. It's called When Empathy Fails, How to Stop Those Hell-Bent on Destroying You. And it sounds like a terrible thing, but what I keep going toward is the way to deal with if it's an autistic person or if it's somebody else who has an empathy disorder, if you build up your ability to be empathic, if you take good care of yourself, if your boundaries are clear, if you can say no when somebody really is not, being kind to you, not taking care of your, not being respectful of you, there's a lot of things that go into being a radiantly empathetic person. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling. I'm trying to rush here. There's a lot of things that go into that, but I think that's healing. I think that makes it possible to deal with people who have trouble connecting. Autistic people do have trouble connecting. They don't recognize the signals, but generally their heart's in the right place, just like when I asked my daughter to go downstairs and listen to music. She didn't want to have a meltdown. She didn't want to be difficult, but she knew she wasn't able to manage her feelings right then. So if you have radiant empathy, you get that. You give the other person that break, and then you step back and recognize all the love that's coming into your life in these relationships. But it's a lot of work.
Well, it is. I mean, just the idea of being able to be kind and have empathy for people, but not compromise your boundaries, that's like crazy talk to me. I want to know more about how you do that. I'm going to have to get that book. Because don't you find that's the hard thing as a mother? It's, I can have empathy for somebody. I'm very good at that. But preserving my own boundaries while doing it
is very difficult.
Woo! That's just crazy talk there, Dr. Marshak.
Especially
we'll have to get that one.
They're pushing your boundaries all the time anyway.
Yeah.
And if you're a mom or a dad, or the significant person in this child's life or this adult's life, they really are counting on you a lot. I was talking to some parents just this morning about their child who's doing all kinds of out-of-the-box destructive things. And I said, it's all on your shoulders. Mm-hmm. Teachers are helping you. Speech pathologist is helping you. There's other, folks in your life. But every day you're the one who needs to keep helping your child feel good about himself.
Yep.
And yet feel good about yourself. Know that you're a valuable human being, and you've got lots going for you. You're going to know more about how to be a human being than the average person, frankly, when you're in these relationships.
Wow.
Well, thank you, Dr. Marshak. And once again, you can get your books on Amazon.
Yep.
We want to recommend them for parents and spouses of those with Asperger's syndrome.
And for more information, go to kmarshak.com.